past a curry house with the sunniest frescoes, past a casual Siletti sweet shops and
we knew in '93 when Beacon got elected at the by-election, people felt intimidated. People didn't want to come out and vote because of the thugs that were out and about in terms of what they did in the area. So our response was in '94 that if the BNP can bring people into our area and intimidate people, then we can do the same. You know, we were young people at that time, and our line was, you know, if they're going to intimidate people from coming out and vote, then we're going to come out to intimidate them. So that people felt safer, people felt comfortable, people were saying, well, hold on, you know, there are people out in the streets, we don't have to be afraid to go out and vote, we don't have to be afraid to go out and take part in activities.
The islanders, the people who lived here, yes, they were deeply racist, in fact, but because there was no, they were mainly, really 99% white British working class, and so in a sense they had no obvious outlet for their racist prejudices, or, you know, nobody in a way to direct their racism against. They simply lived largely here. Why they were so racist, of course, is historically they worked at the centre of the British Empire, so they had taken in these ideas that the British Empire, you know, ruled the world, was the best and the most clever and all the rest of it, and sort of dominated the world. So they have very deeply taken in those wrong ideas.
You know, any time that there was an attack or a conflict, just saying, oh, it wasn't a racist attack, this was just two young gangs, you know, and you know, this constant sort of like minimising of the actual racism involved in the violence. At least that's what I was seeing through reading reports and records. So there was this constant denial of the racism that was happening. So how can you tackle the problem if you're actually refusing to acknowledge that they exist?
Yeah. I remember when we first sort of tried to get access to, for example, the community halls. You know, they're controlled by certain people, certain camps, and it's very difficult. Even to arrange a meeting, community meeting, was difficult. And I remember we had to go to the council to sort of, you know, get some clarification. Even then, you know, the council couldn't help us to get access to those community centres.
And you've heard that in the island there was already a community that was quite insulated, quite deeply racist in its perceptions, broadly speaking. And when for the first time, just before I say this, one other thing has to be said, that, you know, the issue of homelessness is what caused us as activists in the 80s and 90s to go from neighborhood to neighborhood almost liberating a neighborhood at a time. Because if you consider Brick Lane and Spitalfields in the E1 area, if you look at housing records of the 80s, every Bengali family wanted to move into E1. Nobody wanted to move to E2 or E3, and God forbid E14. Okay? That's how it was. That's really how it was. And of course, the local authority couldn't ensure that everyone lives in E1, had to gradually put Bengalis into hostile areas. And who were the people who were put into hostile areas? The ones that had no choice but where they might be put. These were homeless families.
The government ignored the Jews when they begged for help. The fascists hand out leaflets against the Jews. Some take it and others don't. The fascists destroyed the houses of Jews. The windows get smashed and houses get vandalized.
Concerned that the fascists were not to gain control in our London, and the turnout was simply wonderful, from the dockers in the East End to the Jewish lads and men and women in the Whitechapel areas. They were together against fascism making any inroad into our capital. Our London belonged to its people, not to a small body of people who spoke of hatred. We spoke about cooperation and building love. London, to be a city to be proud to live in.
It's nice to be back here. This time last year, this place was almost like a second home for us. You know, the process of negotiation between the different components that make up United East End were at times extremely difficult. There's no two ways about it, and I think we shouldn't seek to gloss over those. Those are political differences that relate to the role of the Labour Party, for example, that relate to the role of this institution here, i.e. the LMC and the East London Mosque, that relate to the role and place of LGBT, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender organisations role of trade unions, the role of what I sometimes think of the secular Bangladeshi left.
Out of the lessons we learnt in 2010, it was important to try to contain the different approaches to the EDL as much as we could. So that it was important to say that those who want to go out on the streets should go out on the streets and protest, and those who want to stay at home because they take the line that the way that you oppose the EDL is by turning your backs on them and not changing your lifestyle because they're carrying around, also should be allowed to do that, and that we recognise that these are two strands that we can hold together as a common Tower Hamlets response to the EDL.
So I do believe that there is a lot, and EDL don't come across as, knowing what they're talking about, and certainly, their fight against extremism and their targeting of this mosque, for example. I mean, I don't know about other mosques and how they portray themselves to be extreme, but certainly in this mosque, the kind of activities and the work that we do with the community and the other groups and people of faith and non-faith and so on and so forth, we certainly we fight against extremism rather than being the extremist.
Whoever has walked slowly down Brick Lane in the darkening air and stiff little rain, past a curry house with assiduous frescoes, past the casual Siletti sweet shops and cafes, and the Huguenot silk attics of Fournier Street, and the mosque that was before a synagogue and before that a chapel. Whoever has walked down that darkening tunnel of rich history, from Bethnal Green to Osborne Street at Aldgate East, past the sweatshops at night, and the imams and the hennaed hair, and the calls of Bible sellers on the pavements, windows candled to Friday night, would know the street as a seamless cloth.
We have to work together and be vigilant. And I think last year that unity showed.